Feminists have been making a fuss over catcalling over the past several years. And of course, when we see feminists making a fuss over something, it's only a matter of time before pandering politicians start making a fuss over the same thing. France, one of many countries where men generally have spines with the same consistency as pastry dough, is in the news on this, with President Emmanuel Macron recently proclaiming he wanted to end France's so-called macho culture. France is poised to unleash the police on men, arresting them for catcalling, whistling, and trying to score digits on the street from French women. There's a short article from The Sun on this, which I'll go ahead and read to you in its entirety. Wolf whistling is set to be banned in France, it reads, as the government declares war on men hassling women in public. Under new plans, bugging women for their telephone numbers and following them could also be prohibited. The crackdown comes after surveys show virtually all French women have been harassed on public transport, in the streets or elsewhere at some time. France's new leader, President Emmanuel Macron, has pledged to end this during his election campaign this year. Only a few countries, including Belgium and Portugal, have banned such behavior. The UK and others have broader laws against harassment in general, but none so specific. Some lawyers believe men should only be prosecuted when police officers witness an offense. Others say women should be able to file criminal lawsuits against offenders at a later date. But Marlene Schiappa, the Undersecretary for Gender Equality, defended the plan and gave an example of behavior that would be illegal. She said, "You are a woman in an underground train. I am a man. I follow you. You get off the train, I get off. You get on another train. I get on too. I ask you for your telephone number. I ask again. I ask a third time. You feel oppressed. That is street harassment." Giles William Goldnadel, a lawyer, accused Ms. Schiappa of seeking to outlaw heavy Latin chat-up lines. He said the only consequences of the law would be to enrich feminist lawyers and to clog up the court system. Now, I don't know what a Latin chat-up line is, much less a heavy one, and I can't say that I care, but I think Goldnadel summed up the situation pretty well. As with all other feminist-inspired legislation across the globe, the end result is easy money for feminists at the expense of men. Nothing new here. I am obligated to point out that this is just another in a long line of feminist assaults on personal freedom, as well as taking one more step toward the complete infantilization of women. At some point in the future, I expect there to be adult diaper dispensers on women-only French trains, provided free, of course, at the expense of male taxpayers. I recall many years ago, in blue pill days, mind you, I was sitting at the bar of a cheap breakfast joint in Houston, flirting with the waitress. Another guy came in and sat 2 stools down from me and tried several times to butt in on the conversation, looking for some attention of his own. After a few attempts that fell flat, she turned to him abruptly, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "It'll never happen." Then she went right back to talking to me without missing a step. Now, sure, it was pretty cold. I knew how that kind of rebuff could feel from having sat in his seat a few times myself. But I will give her credit. She didn't waste his time. She didn't mince words. And most importantly, she handled it herself to great effect. The dude didn't even finish his coffee. He just tossed down some money on the counter and left. I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty well convinced she wasn't traumatized. She didn't run screaming for a cop, and she didn't want a lawyer. She didn't ask for my intervention. She didn't even roll her eyes. She just dealt with it and moved on. Problem solved. At this point, I'm thinking I've already spent too much time on this part of the talk, the part where I point out that turning women into litigious snowflakes works to the detriment of both sexes, and that despite the idiotic ramblings of France's Undersecretary of Gender Equality, someone asking for your phone number 3 whole times isn't oppression. I don't want to dwell on the deleterious effects of criminalizing the default standard of reproductive strategy, that being that men will either pursue women to initiate relationships or go without. There's little point in dwelling on this latest version of the problem about to be inflicted on French men. The war against men, all men, has been going on worldwide for 50 years. All we are seeing in France and a host of other countries is the codification of all that hatred. It's just the icing on top of the cake of female privilege. So, what I will talk about is a much more important observation on the phenomenon of catcalling. First, and make no mistake about it, women like it. Or, as Jessica Valenti, America's Minister of Gender Stupidity, once quipped, "Men rarely catcall me anymore. I hate that our culture makes me miss it." Yeah, Jessica, it's the culture, not your self-absorbed pining for men, hopefully men you find attractive, to make pathetic stabs at getting your attention whenever they see you on the street. You're not whining because your ride on the cock carousel is over, and you're not mourning over the loss of something you depended on to feel good about yourself. Something you liked. But make no mistake about it, I don't give a damn if women like it or don't like it. The insane obsession with what women like and don't like is just the standard gynocentric fuel driving all this craziness. And it's not that men catcalling is denigrating to women. It's not. It's denigrating to men. While I don't wish catcalling men to wind up in handcuffs, I have to say I won't feel sorry for them when it happens, at least not for the men who actually did catcall. My sympathy for beta cucks is all used up. And that is what catcalling men are. If the well-deserved shame for how they lower themselves in public over anything in a skirt isn't enough to wake them up, maybe sitting in the back of a squad car will. That's not an endorsement for the laws in France, mind you, just trying to make some lemonade from the lemons. Perhaps for men who do wind up behind bars for that third inquiry about a woman's phone number, it will serve to illuminate the world they're living in. Don't pursue women and you end up in sexual jail. Pursue women and you end up in real jail. The only sane option is to quit playing the game. Men who won't lower themselves with pathetic attempts to shower strange women with fawning attention don't have to worry about it. They are too busy practicing self-respect to be bothered with catcalling and other activities of the mentally unemployed. They won't be bothered with other things too, which will invariably be a bitter lesson for women as well. The catcallers are a familiar type. You will often find them sitting on scaffolds at construction sites, eating lunch from boxes and eyeing pedestrians that pass by on the sidewalk. They are the same kind of men who climb down off the scaffolds and make a beeline for the trouble when they see a woman in distress of any kind. Arrest enough of them for whistling, and they will likely dispense with the stupid heroics as well. That won't bode well for a generation of women who can't handle a compliment on the street without a cop, a lawyer, and a psychotherapist. That is the double-edged sword of gynocentrism. Men who are slaves to the allure of women don't just sometimes inconvenience them by seeking attention. They also lay down their lives for them in purely reflexive action, something that in today's society rates right up there with howling at the moon over a short skirt in terms of intelligence. As we know, the long-running standard for most women is to want their cake and eat it too. They want attention from men, the ones they're attracted to, and they want the ones they are not attracted to stay out of sight. They also want men who are willing to sacrifice. Any man will do. but they want it all delivered, wrapped in a pink ribbon and left on the doorstep without making too much noise. And that's the real issue here. Mindless, sacrificial adulation of women doesn't come in that neat little package. Like everything else that's mindless, it's messy and inconvenient at times, downright sloppy and stupid at others. The solution, of course, is men who are mindful, which is another way of saying men who are red pill. Red pill men won't be too much in arms about catcalling laws in France. It's just nature's way of clearing beta cucks off the street. Women can have their peaceful, uninterrupted rides on the train and strolls down the sidewalk. They can also get their own asses out of trouble whenever it finds them. I'm sure the politicians and lawyers will be right on the situation to save them. And that is it for this talk today. As always, I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.